Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Catholic Truth Podcast. We are so happy that you've joined us today. We have a very special guest talking about annulments and divorce. And what are they? Because many people know that you cannot get divorced in the Catholic Church and remarried unless you have an annulment. It's indispensable. A Catholic cannot get remarried unless they have an annulment. And so what is an annulment? And many people complain about this. They have a vendetta against the church saying, why won't the church allow this? That's not fair. That's why I left the Catholic Church. That's why I don't want to be Catholic, and so on and so on. But we don't realize that it was Jesus himself in Matthew chapter 19 who said that a person cannot get divorced and remarried without committing adultery. And so it was Jesus himself who came up with this, and it's just the Catholic Church who upholds it. Now, some people will say that, well, annulments are too expensive or they're too hard to get. Well, others say that they're too easy to get and they're given out like candy. They're given out like water. So what's the difference? Still others will say, well, Catholic annulments are like Catholic divorce. I mean, so if you could just get a divorce through an annulment, why not just allow divorce? And there's a lot of great questions people have. And to welcome to the show, Felix Mendez, we want to welcome him because he is a canon lawyer and he is going to answer all of our questions on this. Felix Mendez was born in Spain. He obtained an STL with a specialty in moral theology and a JCD from the Ecclesiastical University in Spain and a master's degree in international relations from Catholic University in Germany. He has worked for many years as a translator from Italian, German, French, and English, translating it into Spanish. So he knows a lot of languages. He's a very smart, intelligent man. Felix is now working as a judge at a metropolitan tribunal of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Atlanta. He has recently published a series of videos entitled How to Get an Annulment on YouTube, both in English and in Spanish. So we are excited to have Felix joining us on this show today. So Felix Mendez is a canon lawyer, and we have been talking about annulments and divorce. And we've said that Jesus himself taught that divorce is not possible because God himself created marriage. And he created two souls who, when they get married, they come together as one whole person, like one soul. So God sees them as one. And Jesus himself said that what God has joined together, no man can separate. No man can put asunder, meaning you can't throw marriage aside and you can't go get divorced and remarried to someone else, because Jesus said it's adultery, which is one of the most serious sins in the world. In fact, Jesus puts it on par with murder and witchcraft. Like, it's a serious...
Idolatry. They are the three traditional big sins of Israel, right? Idolatry, murder, and fornication.
Exactly. And we were just talking about the differences between annulments and divorce. Divorce meaning you want to put someone away because you don't want to be with them anymore for whatever reason. And annulments saying that, well, the marriage never happened in God's eyes. There was no marriage because certain indicators need to be met. Certain things need to be met in order for a marriage to be sacramental in God's eyes. And if it is sacramental, for life.
Wait there. Let me stop you right there.
Thank you. That's why you're the expert.
Sacramental is not the same as valid.
Okay, can you explain the difference?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Let me read to you from the Code of Canon Law. Okay, this is a very, very boring law. It's Canon 1055. Okay, the matrimonial covenant. So this contract. Okay, the matrimonial covenant by which a man and a woman establish between themselves a partnership of the whole life, and which is ordered by its nature to the good of the spouses and the procreation and education of the offspring, has been raised by Christ the Lord to the dignity of a sacrament between the baptized. Okay, so you have two levels. You have the natural level, which is what every man and woman are naturally oriented towards. Okay, so we are sexual beings. We we are called to procreation. We since puberty, everything awakens in you, and sex is calling, and whoa, what's going on, right? The hormones, you're crazy, then more mature, but this accompanies you throughout your life. Okay, so this expresses itself naturally in this contract that we call marriage. What is marriage? What is marriage? Aside from the spiritualizations and nice poems and Hollywood movies, okay, what is marriage? Technically speaking, marriage is a contract celebrated between a man and a woman who agree to say, okay, we are going to have sex with each other, exclusively with each other, and we're going to be together until death do us part to take care of our children. And that is marriage. That is what we know marriage throughout the world, all cultures, and the church calls this natural marriage. Okay, in the sense that, yeah, it's what people do. I mean, it's what people do. I mean, and I think that an amazing proof that this is true is that people are still getting married today. I mean, in this world where everything and everyone tells you not to do it, right? No, are you crazy? In Spain, it's like, are you crazy? Are you? People still get married, of course, in much smaller numbers than a few decades ago, but still today, people are getting married because we feel this natural tendency. We want to say to another human being, I want to grow old by your side. All these things are natural. They come to us, okay? So what we call the sacrament of marriage is nothing else than this natural contract, this beautiful natural force within us, okay, in us humans, that Christ has raised to the dignity of a sacrament when the two spouses are baptized. So, for instance, if a Catholic marries a Buddhist, and the Buddhist was never baptized, their marriage is not a sacrament. But it's valid. It's a valid marriage. They are not fornicating. They are married. They are husband and wife. So validity is not the same as sacramentality. So one thing is for a marriage to be sacramental, like I think our marriages are, thank God, right? And another thing is whether a given marriage, sacramental or not, was valid or invalid.
So if a marriage is not valid, it's possible to get an annulment. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
But if it is valid and two people are validly married, they can't get divorced and they can't get remarried. Is that what you're saying?
So as a judge of the Catholic Church, I gotta say that no one should divorce.
Correct.
That's what I should say.
We had already mentioned, like, if there was like something serious, like if you're being abused in your marriage, like you're being physically beaten or something, obviously God, if all possible, wouldn't want you to stay in that marriage, but in all, just about, every case, we shouldn't be getting divorced. But even if we do, we can't get remarried if it's a valid marriage. It's impossible without committing adultery, right?
Okay, there are several topics in there. Yes, okay, so the first one is divorce. Okay, the church has always taught, since divorce starts appearing with modernity and the modern state tries to put its dirty hands in our private lives, and of course marriage is so important, they immediately try to do it. The church has always said, stop putting your hands in our marriages. Okay, our marriages are sacraments, and the sacraments are only for the church. Don't do that. This is us. Okay, but the state say, yeah, whatever, and they kept doing it. So in no case should a priest or anyone who speaks in the name of the church recommend someone to get a divorce. In no case. However, this is complicated, etc. For instance, in the United States, because of the relationships between the states and the church, the tribunals of the church have the custom to request a decree of divorce before they get into the proceedings of declaration of nullity, just not to get into trouble with the state, okay? Because we could fall in cases of bigamy or whatever. So to be on the safe side, American tribunals, so far as I know, they usually request a decree of divorce beforehand. Okay, so first you go through the divorce proceedings, and then we will consider your annulment. In Spain, that's not like that, of course. This marriage was declared invalid by the authority of the church, and we believe that this authority is valid. We recognize the authority of the church too. The second thing is the typical case of those who are suffering violence inside of the home, or who are living in very dire situations. Okay, and of course, the natural thing, what we all think is, especially if there is a danger to your integrity, wherever, get out, separate, but physical distance between you and her, between you and him. Okay, of course, absolutely. Actually, in the Code of Canon Law, there is there are norms on how to do separations. Okay, no one does this, but it could be done. I mean, somewhere a couple of spouses who have no doubt to the validity of their marriage, but don't want to live together anymore, and then they can come to the authority of the church, and that can be instructed in an administrative procedure. That is a possibility, and for instance, in case of adultery. Okay. Now, in the case of someone who's been beaten and the children are in danger or something like that, can't they just go on, move on, find a better person and live a better life? Well, it depends. And I know this is not fashionable to say, but come on. Here, you and I are not precisely people who love to say what people want to hear, right? We are Christians, and sometimes the only way for a Christian is the heroic way. So sometimes there is no middle way between being a martyr and a hero and being a bad person. Sometimes it's like the few times in your life, usually this happens only a few times in your life, but this happens. Sometimes life comes to you and say, okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to lose money, lose reputation, lose your health, or are you going to do it the easy way? Okay, and sometimes, and I know it's dramatic, it's horrible to tell to a person who's suffered from their spouse, to tell them, you know what, you are actually married to him or to her. You cannot live with a different person. And I know this is very harsh, and let me finish this. Yes, this is very harsh. I've been crying shoulder to shoulder with people in situations like this. So I know what I'm talking about, and I understand this is a very tough message. But sometimes you gotta look at the cross and look at the destroyed body of Christ, who's the spouse, who's the groom of mankind, who were us, who were there spitting him and torturing him and killing him. Sometimes you gotta love your enemy. And I think that in marriage, this is particularly true. For us who are living in a happy marriage, but sometimes our spouses become our enemies, and you gotta love your enemy, even though you're mad, and sometimes the situation is way worse. It's a very dire, difficult situation. And it breaks you to say to someone who said, I am a good Christian, I never knew, and I married in good faith, and I cannot live with this person anymore. He beat me, she was abusing me, whatever it is. And to tell to these people, well, there is no option for you. We've tried to find reasons for a declaration of nudity, but nothing comes up. As far as we know, you are married to this abuser. You're married to this person.
So let's try to explain that because people might be a little bit confused right now on well, how would that be? So it brings up a couple of questions. But first, let me just say that many of the saints experienced this too. Like Saint Rose of Lima, I believe, comes to mind. She had a husband who was an atheist, not a very nice guy, and she stayed with him the whole time and ended up converting him on his deathbed. And her sons, who were just as mean and angry and abusive as he was, and she became
Saint Monica, right?
Yes, Saint Monica. Many saints have unfortunately gone through this, but so what does it take? You keep saying that sometimes, you are in a bad marriage, you don't like your marriage, but you're validly married, meaning you're fully married in God's eyes. The two can't be separated. But then you're saying that it seems like, sometimes it's the marriages we discover because of one problem or another, or because of one thing or another, they're not actually valid. And you can realize that, what an annulment is saying is that there was never a marriage to begin with. And this is really confusing sometimes, but I think for me, one of the easiest ways to understand this is certain things, which you can correct me on, need to be met. One, you need to have freedom. You need to be able to make your own choice. It has to be for life. You have to be open for children. You can go through this list in more detail, but the point is certain items need to be met. And I remember hearing the story of Britney Spears. And Britney Spears ended up getting married, and because she got drunk the night before at a party, and she ended up waking in the morning with a wedding ring on her finger. And she apparently got married, doesn't remember anything. And we would obviously say that was not a marriage, because it wasn't free. She didn't choose it. She was doesn't even remember anything. That's not a real marriage. No marriage took place, even though she may have gone through the ceremony, said the words. There are certain things that need to be said in order for marriage to exist in God's eyes. So if these things aren't met, people can get an annulment. And what an annulment says is that these conditions were never met. So maybe you could help explain it to people a little bit more detail. What are some of these things that need to be met? And how do you know if you've met them or not?
Very good. Well, product placement, you can look it up in my videos, how to get an annulment or cómo obtener la nulidad in YouTube. They are available, maybe not very easy to find. I don't know if we can share with the followers a link or something.
If you give me the links, I'll put them all down in the show description below for sure.
Okay, thank you. And let's see. There are three things, three main groups of things that can make a marriage invalid. There are three things. The first one is the canonical form. Catholics, in order to get married and to get validly married, need to get married before their pastor. It's more complicated than that. It's the pastor or the bishop or a priest, deacon, a bishop, presbyter, or deacon who have been delegated to officiate the wedding.
So you're saying that it's not a real marriage if they get married on the beach or on the mountaintop or something. It's not a real marriage, right?
Not necessarily. You are not supposed to do that, but it's not a requisite for validity. So getting married inside of the church, of the physical building of the temple, that's not mandatory for validity. For validity, what we call the canonical form is that you have there this officiant, the qualified assistant that we call the priest of the parish in which the marriage is celebrated, and two witnesses, two people who they don't need to be Christian. They can just be two people who are coming by there. Can you please, like for instance, let's imagine an emergency marriage in a hospital. Right, and the chaplain is there, the person is sick, and immediately he gets two people who, I don't know, a doctor and a nurse who were there, and that's a canonical form. But if you don't do that and you're Catholic, you are not getting married. So many people speak of civil marriage as almost, I would say, a preliminary stage of getting married. So I see that a lot here in the United States, a lot between In many Hispanic countries, and, all over America, I don't know, from Mexico, Colombia, you hear this, no, I got married civilly. And it's like there are two marriages, no? This one and the other one. For us, I mean, in the eyes of the church, which is a sovereign system of law, which has its own institutions, older than any of the institutions of the current countries of the world, by the way, to us, if a Catholic doesn't get married in the canonical form, that is not a marriage. Okay, we say he's civilly married to make us understood, but we don't believe that this Catholic is married. He's single. He's living with someone who's not married to, but they are not married, because for Catholics to be married, they need to do that in front of the priest. Okay, and that is what we call the canonical form. This canonical form was imposed by the Council of Trent. You know, back in the day, it was possible to get married privately. Actually, if you read the Quixote, you know, Don Quixote, the famous Spanish literature book, there are many cases of men who were in love, like 4 or so in the book, of men who were in love with a woman, and they are asking, and finally she considered, okay, let's do it. But because they understood that was a marriage. I mean, by having sex with someone you are engaged to, you are getting married. So this is not at all what we have today, but back in the day it was so. Okay, you get where I'm going?
You had said earlier that if you wanted a true marriage, marriage in general is having sex with someone, but also being committed to them for life and making that commitment to them and having children with them and promising to raise those children. Now, anybody could get civilly married, right? You said, but it takes more to be sacramentally married.
No. Civilly and sacramentally are not the same either.
Correct.
Because Protestants, Protestants, thank you, they get sacramentally married when they marry civilly. Okay,
correct.
So
yes.
Two Lutherans,
that's true,
they celebrate a completely civil wedding and they are married, and we Catholics believe that marriage, if all conditions are met, is valid. And because they are baptized, their marriage is a sacrament. And it is a civil marriage. And so canonical form is for us Catholics. Okay? So we need to undergo the canonical form in order to get married. Okay, and that's the first of the 3 sources of nudity. The second one is the impediments, which are laws of the church that make invalid a marriage that otherwise would have been valid. In the sense that the consent given by the spouses is sufficient. The act of the will of the party who says, okay, I want to marry you, that is enough for a marriage to be celebrated. But in order to protect some goods, to avoid dangers, so let me give you an example. Cousins. Okay, cousins cannot be validly married if they don't have a dispensation, okay, because of the impediment of consanguinity. Siblings can never get married because of the impediment of consanguinity. And you say, yeah, but what's the problem? Right? Why cannot 2 siblings get married? Right? Well, there are reasons, quite important, by the way, and we know them now thanks to genetics, especially good, reasons why getting married with relatives so close is bad for a society, right? So in order to protect that good, the church says, okay, we are going to make these marriages invalid. Well, the marriage between siblings is not invalid because the church says so, it's because of natural law. But for instance, and you have, one impediment that discriminates us men is the impediment of rapto, we say in Spanish. So when abduction. So if a woman is abducted, she cannot validly marry her captor until she's taken away from him and put in a safe place. So if she's abducted and because of the Stockholm syndrome falls in love with the raptor, with the man who took her, she, even if she goes ahead and gives her consent, that marriage is not valid. Okay? And those are impediments, and they are 12.
She needs to be able to get married freely. Nobody can be forced or coerced to be married. But and if they are, like let's say an arranged marriage, like in the Indian society, that would be able to be annulled because there wasn't a free choice involved. Correct?
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily. No. This is a very
that's
difficult.
why I'm asking. That's why I'm asking, because you're the expert.
Thank you. No, it's
because I always thought there had to be like a freedom. You had to be able to choose marriage.
Yes, and that's true. But throughout history, marriages have been arranged. I remember my grandma, God rest her soul, who had these, wisdom pills, and used to say, back in the day when marriages were arranged, people were happier. Right? I mean, to be honest, this thing that we do now of deciding who you want to marry because of love is fairly new. It's fairly new in history. I had a friend in Spain who was very close with a Syrian. He was already born and raised in Spain, but his family was from Syria. And his wedding was arranged. And my friend, of course, was like, man, are you okay with this? And he said, yeah, because they are Muslim, it's their tradition. And he said, my mother loves me, and my mother knows more about women and about marriage than I do. So I trust her to choose a good wife for me.
Okay,
so that is a valid marriage because
he freely accepted it. Exactly. Okay, that makes sense.
It would be invalid if I tell you, Bryan, I am your father and you're gonna marry this woman, and I don't want. You shut up and you go. That is invalid. Okay.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's a good distinction. Thank you.
And in here, in the case of the abduction, I am talking about a particular case in which is what we call the Stockholm syndrome. People who are abducted and develop emotions towards their captors is a very common thing to happen.
Correct, yeah.
So even if you are brainwashed and you really want to marry this guy, okay, so she's like, oh my God, he's so strong, he's so wonderful, he's amazing, I want to marry you. And they get married, even if she was, quote unquote, freely. We know a lot about freedom and it's complicated, but she was giving that act of her will that makes a marriage. The church says, okay, but we have these special laws for very special cases, and this is one of them, and you are not married. Like, for instance, the impediment of age, which are outrageously low, but it's because of history. It's a universal thing for many different cultures, etc. So children, I was going to say. So, yeah, children. For us, they are children. In different cultures, they are not so much like, but girls under 14 and boys under 16 cannot get married. And that doesn't matter, oh no, but they are from this place where they are very mature and this is completely normal. Doesn't matter. Oh, but these are special cases. Doesn't matter. I don't care. Their marriages are invalid.
Interesting.
And those are what we call impediments because they impede your marriage from becoming real.
So if any of these conditions are met, then you don't have a real marriage. So when someone gets an annulment, you're not saying, oh, I'm just getting divorced because I want to separate from this guy. What we're saying is that the marriage was never a marriage to begin with. And we're declaring that there was no marriage, which is why you're able to remarry in that case, as opposed to if you were validly married, then there's no remarriage for that. Now, let me ask you a quick question because I've heard this too, is what about, is being open to life necessary in a Catholic marriage? And if you're not open to life, is that an impediment for marriage as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that is one of the most typical grounds of the third group of reasons for marriages to be invalid, which are the defects of consent. And those are the most common, by the way. I mean, the first two, lack of form and impediments, are not very common. You can take a look in my videos. I explain everything in detail, but I give examples so that helps, like from movies, etc. To see this is the case with this impediment. The third group, which is the big one, okay, where most marriages which are declared invalid fall in this category. They are the defects of consent. Okay, marriage is made by an act of the will, which we call consent. It is what we express to the words of consent. Okay, the yes I do. But what really matters is not what you say; it's what you think. Okay, is the act of your will. Is that volition? If you want to get married, then you're getting married. Maybe you are saying yes I do, but you are under pressure, as you were saying before. Maybe someone has threatened with killing you if you don't get married. Okay, then there is a defect in your consent, a lack of the freedom. There are different grounds in this regard. You have incapacities, you have exclusions, you have the errors, and again, product placement, I explain everything in my videos. Within the exclusions, you have the exclusion of children. So, or to be more accurate, the exclusion of the offspring. And this nudity happens when people want to avoid children completely or partially, but they have the determination to do so. So it's not a not want, it's a want not. Yes, if you don't think about it, no, I didn't think about children, then you're getting validly married. Okay. If you never spoke about the issue, we'll see, that is a valid marriage.
Okay.
However, if you say at the time of the wedding, I want to marry you, but I don't want to have children with you, and if we need to have children, I don't want to marry you, that marriage, of course, is invalid. And it's invalid because your consent is not whole. There is an element which is essential to marriage, because marriage, what is marriage? A union between a man and a woman to have children and raise them together. So if you want to take out, not only you don't think about that. No, you want to take out that from your consent. You're not agreeing to marriage anymore. You're agreeing to a thing that you came up with. Okay.
Great. No, thank you. This explains everything really well. So, again, if you're validly married, you can't get divorced. And if all the credentials are met, and you
cannot obtain a dissolution. A declaration of nullity of your marriage. Divorce, I explained from the beginning, is a civil thing.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's what you do with.
But you can't get an annulment, meaning you're married for life.
Right.
You're stuck, as we keep saying. However, if some of these conditions aren't met, meaning you're forced to get married when you don't want to against your will, or if you're not open to life, or, there's other things as well that I'm sure you explain in your videos, which I will link down below and people can see, then we're saying that there was no marriage. And that's why you're allowed to remarry in a sense, but you're not remarrying. You're getting married for the first time because you weren't married in the first place. But there are people. So the people out there, maybe some of you out there in the audience watching this right now or listening to it through this podcast, maybe you are in a marriage that you don't want to be in, and you think maybe it's invalid in some way, and maybe you can get an annulment, or maybe you realize it is valid, and you have questions. I would ask you to, first of all, to, seek a priest and, get help and talk to a priest, because the church wants to help you, as Felix was saying earlier, with whatever situation you're in. They want to try to help as much as possible, but also check out Felix's videos too, because, he'll answer every single question you possibly have. But the issue is, I just want to say that this is why marriage is no joke. You don't just get married, especially if you're fearful. Oh, well, I might not get married someday. I'm just going to marry this person because this is all I can get. If that's a valid marriage, that's all you're going to get. And you're not going to get anything better. You don't want to get married out of fear. You don't want to get married out of guilt. You don't want to get married to the wrong person, because it's a valid marriage. You're stuck for life. Because remember, two people getting married in God's eyes become one flesh. Jesus said two souls become one, and you can't get rid of them. There's no way to separate them because they're one in God's eyes. And so what I think, just to summarize here, that what Mr. Mendez is saying is that the annulment is saying that they're not two people splitting up. We're saying there was no marriage to begin with. So that when you get
they
married,
never
you're
got
getting married for
really
the first
together
time.
in the first place. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what a declaration of nudity. And actually, you could get a declaration of nudity for any other legal act that you do in your life, like a purchase. Okay? You could go to the judge and say, hey, I was fooled into believing that this was an iPhone, and this is not an iPhone. So this person, can you declare the nudity of, I mean, we don't do that because, I mean, marriage is very special, but many times justice in different legal systems declares this act was not valid. This was an invalid act. Therefore,
that's a very good
to
example.
be reformed. Absolutely. And
yeah, very good example.
by the way, there is one thing that worries a lot to many people, especially here in the United States, in my experience.
Sure.
They are afraid of getting a declaration of nudity because they don't want their children to be bastards. That's to me was a surprise, but now I keep hearing that. And first of all, being a bastard, which is such a ugly word, right? I mean, we don't use it as an insult in Spanish. That's probably why I wouldn't call anyone bastard. It seems like I'm from the 19th century. You bastard.
That's true.
No, bastardo. No. So, first of all, how many children are born out of wedlock nowadays? So that's the first one. Second, it has no legal consequence, no moral consequence whatsoever. I mean, there is no, you don't have any kind, but most importantly, they are not bastards. Okay, they are not, and that must be taught, because children born in putative marriages are not bastards, and it's not the same. And that's why I wanted to make this precision. It's not the same to be completely single, in the sense I never married. This is my first marriage in my life. That to have had a putative, which in Latin means something that you think, but it's not true, a marriage that I thought in good faith that was valid.
Right.
Of course, and if there are children who have suffered the separation, that they have enough suffering, and there is that. This is important, okay, for anyone who's out there considering getting an annulment, or to put their affairs in order. Don't be afraid because of this. No one is going to call anything to your children. They are not going to be less. They are not going to. Yeah, on the contrary. I mean, if you really have the need to do this in the eyes of God, and you really think that this is what you gotta do, and you failed in what was once the most important project in your life, and you want to put your affairs in order, as Bryan was saying, consult with a priest. I don't know, because I mean, priests are not canonists, and many times they I mean, it's not like they know everything. No? Sometimes we want them to know everything. In my experience, sometimes they are a little too daring, like saying, "Oh, your marriage is invalid. Don't worry, you just can't." And whoa, whoa, Father, relax. It's more complicated than that. I mean, usually what priests do is, okay, let's talk. They heal, they listen, they take care, and they orient you towards the tribunal to go. That's usually the place you gotta go. Okay, and either you know a canonist. And of course, if they want to watch my videos, write questions down there. I am happy to answer, of course. But in general, the general advice is go to a tribunal. So check out which is your diocese tribunal, and write to them and call them and say, hey, I got this case. What do I need to do? Right? And
right, because a priest
is organized in different ways.
A priest only can give you his best recommendation of what he thinks. It doesn't mean that he's right, you're saying. And so definitely check out Felix's videos in the show description below, because he does know, since he is a canon lawyer and this is what he does for a living. But he also said to contact your diocese as well, because they can help you and lead you to the right people. So we actually are coming to the end of our show, Felix. And so let me ask you, a lot of people, we had started to say this earlier, but a lot of people say that, annulments are too expensive, or they're too hard to get, or they're too easy to get. And people have objections, I guess, to annulments. Now, I think some of these things can be true sometimes, right? There are abuses, I guess it might be said that way, that do happen and can happen. But maybe could you explain that to us in a little bit more depth, and as to what we should think about it?
Yeah. I mean, of course, there are abuses. I mean, we are human, and some of us are corrupt, and that's why we have a penal law. That's why the church has mechanisms in place to prevent that. But we are not naive about it. We know that these things happen, and that's why there are laws, for instance, that we judges must never perceive gifts from the parties in a case. Right? Why? Well, because you must not do it, because you got to be impartial. And also there are not corruptions in the sense of I get something, but also intellectual corruptions that the popes, as I was saying before, have criticized. The Pope, not the Signatura Apostolica, no, the popes have criticized very, very strongly several times, saying this, I mean, in other words, but saying what you were saying in the beginning, this is not the Catholic divorce. I mean, for instance, in my videos, I quote the famous, I think it's 1989, I'm not sure, speech of John Paul II to the Roman Rota, which is quoted by Benedict XVI years later, saying that this spectacle that we see, that all marriages are declared invalid in some dioceses, this is a scandal. And they say, this is a scandal. And you and I know what the Bible says to those who scandalize, right?
Very harsh words.
Yeah, so that is real, and of course it's real. And I would say, look, in the church, in the entrance, we have confessionals, and the Mass starts asking forgiveness. Why? Because we know we are sinners. We know it. That there's no, oh my God, there is a sinner in the church. Yes, that's the idea, right? So St. Augustine was saying when he said that the church was holy and prostitute, sancta et meretrix. That's St. Augustine teaching. Okay, right. You and I know, and this is no different. I would always advise prudence. Okay, never judge until you know everything. This is something that my job as a judge teaches me, that you never know the whole story. Sometimes you listen to one party, oh my God, the other one is very, very bad. And you listen to the other one and say, wow, maybe they will. So things are not easy. Situations are complicated. The church has been suffering one of the worst crises of her history in the last decades. And that's, I mean, no secret to anybody. And I don't know. I mean, sometimes people see a small part and say this is corrupt. And you gotta look at the big picture. But I mean, my experience so far has been of general good. I mean, most of the people that I have found, most of the huge majority, with very few exceptions, are people of God who really want to do God's work, etc. I found a few exceptions in my life, and that's no secret, to anyone who knows the church.
Yeah, for me, saying, oh, well, it's too expensive, but as you said, it doesn't even really cost money anymore in most places. And other people say they're too hard to get. Other people say they're too easy to get. The reality is these are just excuses, because people don't want to have to go through the work of getting an annulment. and
that is true sometimes. That is true sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes.
Sometimes it's true.
Yeah, sometimes it's true. Like, I don't know, I could tell you from my experience cases of people who you can tell they are doing this not because of them, but because of their parents or of the person they want to marry. They really don't want to do this, and you can tell, the way they approach the process, etc. For other people, by the way, the process is a spiritual healing process, which is for some
absolutely.
people going all over it with the authority of the church. And by the way, I haven't said that, but I think that the operators of canon law, we have a huge responsibility here, because people come to us in a very difficult situations, and they are opening their hearts for us, telling us very, very delicate, extremely delicate stuff about their sexual life, about their emotions, about how they were raised. And if you do that well, so if you are caring and respectful, and you have a word of compassion, and you put it with the salt of the gospel, as St. Paul said, you can do an amazing good, and you can help people in a beautiful way. And I have, in my past experienced this, people who thank you. This has been very good for me. I have been healed by the Holy Spirit throughout this. For others, however, it's not that, and we got to be very honest about it. For some people, going through the annulment process is very difficult, and that's got to be said too.
Yeah, you're right. And I know for certain people it has been very difficult, but if you want to go through it, it has to be done. There's no way around it. The converse, I will confirm what you've already said, is also true, is that I've had many people find healing through this, and they found God, and they found more happiness in their life through this process. And, and now they are happily married because they took the time and the effort. And it is effort sometimes. Sometimes, as you said, it is a lot of work, but it's worth it for many people. And I would recommend that if you have more questions on this topic, please go to Felix Mendez's YouTube, which I'll put in the show links below. I'll put his YouTube link there, his email address. If you want to get in touch with him, feel free to ask him questions on this, or he can appoint you to the right people. But I think the best course of action would be to go to his YouTube channel. He said that anyone at any time can ask him questions, and he will answer them. So if you are hearing this and you're still a little confused, or you still have questions that weren't answered, I know this isn't going to be fully comprehensive. People have written whole books on it. He has a whole YouTube series on it. So if you still have questions, that's fine. That's good. Get your questions answered. Go to him, go to his videos, and ask those questions directly so he can know and be able to help you. Because a lot of times without the information, without a full understanding of the situation, it's hard to answer a question, especially generically. So if you want to give it, I'm asking for a friend, my friend wants to know, feel free to ask away, and he'll be able to give you the answers. Listen, Felix, I want to really thank you for coming on our show today. There's a ton of people who have these questions, and I think you did a great job of answering them. And there's so much confusion on this. You can hear even myself, who's a very educated Catholic, is still confused on some of these points, because I've heard things from priests and shows and different things. And I think the best thing to do is go to the canon lawyers, who are the experts on this, and to get the truth on these. So you've taught me a lot, and I'm sure you've taught the people who are listening a lot. So really, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. It was great to see you again after all these years. I hope someday we can meet in person again. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolutely. And may God bless you. And as I understand it, you have a new wife. So God bless you and your new family.
I do. Thank you.
Amen. Dios te bendiga.
A ti también.
All right. God, take care.
Bye-bye.